Hey guys, Toolman Tim here. Welcome back to the workshop where we create community, find freedom, promote preparedness, and share success. I'd love to say that it's Sunday night, but it's not. It's actually Wednesday night. So we got a special edition of the workshop podcast. And tonight is January 26th, 20. My daughter caught me the other night. I almost said 2021 again. It's 2022. Whatever's wrong with me, I'm not sure. But episode 61 of the workshop podcast. Now, tonight, we're going to talk about making money, making an income through rental properties. And we got a special guest. I'm going to bring him on in a minute. I just got a couple of announcements to get out of the way. So what do we, tomorrow night, live on Prepper Broadcast Network, and of course on my YouTube and Float, we are going to have the next edition of Preparedness, where we're going to talk about, actually, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to talk about winter emergencies and preparing for winter emergencies. So that should be a lot of fun. If you haven't yet, we launched the official workshop Telegram channel. So it's the place, or sorry, chat. We also have a channel as well, but the chat's where everybody from the workshop community can get together and we can have a chat. It'll be the official place where we can all meet as a community and have a nice little talk. So I'm looking forward to it. It's just starting to grow. So help me kick it off and get it up off the ground. And number 3, I should have mentioned this. I was going to say, so our guest tonight was supposed to be Nicole Sauce, as you guys know, and she's a little bit under the weather. So she was nice enough to get me a replacement, but she never asked me to do this, but I was going to tell you, I was drinking her hollow roast coffee tonight. It's actually my last pot of her Ethiopian dark roast. So I got to get her to send me up some more because she's absolutely spoiled coffee for me. Now I can't drink my regular Maxwell House, so that kind of sucks. But one more quick thing I was going to mention. Today marks the 2-year anniversary. I love to attribute milestones and look back on things, but it's a 2-year anniversary today of when I was first on Nicole's podcast and when I officially launched my YouTube channel. So, things go a long ways. We build some pretty cool things in a couple of years, but it's always good to look back on milestone moments and just say, hey, very cool, So anyway, all right, without further ado, I'm going to bring on Chris Spees. He is from the Lftn community. Hey, Chris, how are you, bud?
Good. How are you?
Very good. I know I've told you already once, but you do not know how much I appreciate you coming in. Like, Chris is an absolute trooper. He come in on about 3.5 minutes notice. Well, not quite, but a less than 2 hours notice, I think. And he's also a bit of an expert on income properties and that sort of thing. So tell us who you are, Chris.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tim. Yes, I guess I'm part of the Lftn community. I've known Nicole and the other folks in that group several years now. I live in South Carolina, and like you said, I do have some income properties that I do as a side business. In my day job, I work for an industrial company doing marketing work for product marketing, and so yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
No problem. And how long have you been like associated with the Lftn community?
At least a couple years now. Yeah, I've gone to several of their the spring workshop they have and other events throughout the year. Other events where maybe people are getting together to do a certain project. So just things like that. Yeah, for several years now.
Gone to any of those infamous GSD weekends at all, have you? Or?
Yeah. There was probably the latest one I did was last year. We had a friend that was installing solar panels and a complete system for his house to run on solar. So that was pretty cool.
What, Sean Mills help with that at all, or was that
Sean did? Yeah, Sean was kind of leading the effort there. So we installed 3 real big solar panels, and then there was a whole setup inside of battery storage and battery management and all of that. So it was pretty neat.
I'm kind of jealous. I'm gonna finally. My wife is like, I always joke with her, but I'm like, I'm gonna finally get to meet all my imaginary internet friends in real life when we come down to the workshop, right? So
that's right. We'll see you there for that. That'll be fun.
I've been talking to Nicole and Patrick a bit, and a bunch of other people on Zello for. It's got to be the better part of 5 years now, I think, pretty close. Wow. And I've never, it's a bit of a jump from, the frozen wasteland that is the People's Republic of Canada to come down to visit you guys, So But
Oh
we're
yeah.
doing it. Last year we were actually supposed to come last spring, and of course, everything and blah blah blah, and we had to cancel. But this year, oh no, we're going. So
Oh, that's great. That's great. So you're gonna probably fly down, or are you gonna
yeah,
drive?
we're gonna make a vacation out of it. We are taking 2 weeks. We're gonna fly in about 10 days before, maybe 9 days before,
Mhm.
and I think we're gonna go over. We've already got it kind of booked out, but what is the spring break area in? Is it North or South Carolina? What's the beach there? Or
Yeah, like Myrtle Beach,
that's
Charleston.
it. Yeah, we're gonna go over there for a night and then down to northern Florida. We've got it all booked out. We're gonna go to Orlando for a couple of days, then
Okay.
over to New Orleans, and then back up to Nashville for
Oh, wow.
I guess yeah. So it'll be. I like to drive, so this is the best of both worlds. We can fly down, then rent a car and drive around. It'll be fun. So
Yeah, that you'll get to see a lot if you can do that. Like you said, Northern Florida and then New Orleans and then up. Wow, that'll be great.
oh yeah, we try to. I don't know if as a Canadian you try to do all the different states, So we're
Mhm.
we've hit a lot of the West Coast and the Midwest and the East Coast, like the Northeast, yeah. But I've never. My wife has been down Florida way, but I've never been down there, so
Mhm.
it'll be fun.
You should have really pretty nice weather too, really, that time of year.
Oh, yeah, and a couple of years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, we went to San Diego, and we left San Diego, and it was like 30 degrees Celsius, which was I can't I have Fahrenheit. It's a good temperature, right? And by the time I got back to Alberta, this was the middle of April, and it was -20.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that doesn't normally happen. That is out of the ordinary, but it
Mhm.
still sucked really bad. So
Mhm.
So yeah, you said what you do for a day job. So how many rentals do you have? How long you been doing it? That kind of stuff.
I have two right now.
Okay.
I've been doing it for probably close to 10 years total. But yeah, the market now is a little bit crazy trying to, add rentals. It's actually, a good time to sell if you can because it's just, the market's just going crazy. But yeah, probably about 10 years total.
Okay.
Uh,
And how did you get into like what made
um,
you what kind of inspired you to? Yeah,
yeah. So my parents, when I lived in Ohio, they had rental property and they were both real estate agents at one time. And so um, I was always, when I was very young, always helping my dad if he, if there was a renter that moved out and he had to, rehab the place to get it ready to rent again. I would always help him with that, whether, it was some mundane task of taking out trash or cleaning a carpet or whatever it is, replacing a water heater, whatever it might be. I would help him with that. So that kind of got me started, and just talking to him about um, the fact that you can get some passive income from doing rentals. So you either have to take either spend time or money, usually to
Mhm.
make more money, and in this case, um, if you can create a passive income stream, it makes it kind of nice because you can still do your day job and do that on the side if you want. So
Know your Joe. Just wondered where you're located. I forgot to ask you that. Why we
my
were talking before. So
yeah, I'm in South Carolina.
right on. Yeah, yeah. And nice and warm there today, or no?
No, not really. We're in let me see here. It says it's 40 degrees right now, but we've been in the 20s to low
Ooh,
30s at night and the 40s to maybe about 50 during the day, so it's not too bad.
so
Yeah.
your dad was pretty handy, was he?
He was
Or is? Or I don't. Yeah. Well.
yeah, I mean there are things like um major electrical or major plumbing that he would not do.
Hmm.
But your general cleanup, repainting, installing a new sink, things like that, fixing certain things, because renters can be pretty hard on stuff. So like screen doors that are loose or
Yep.
cabinets that are the hinges are pulling out or whatever it might be. Door hinges, same thing. So there's a lot of things that I've learned from him that I'll do today, to when I'm going to fix something. So
What you said about extensive electrical and stuff like that. I was always told years ago. They said if you give somebody bad plumbing advice, they'll only end up with wet feet. But if you give somebody bad electrical advice, well, you know where they can end up, right? So
Right. Right.
yeah, I
Exactly.
get that.
Yeah.
So what do you do a lot of your own repairs and fixes and stuff? Or
I do. I had one that I just fixed up recently, and basically the whole place needed painted.
okay.
Needed new carpet. I had a sink that needed repaired, and just things like the bathtub tub shower needed to be cleaned and recaulked and stuff to make it nice. Replace light bulbs, broken window screens and things like that. So
How long
um,
were the tenants in there before they moved out?
they were they were there about, I want to say, about 4 years.
That's not
So
bad then,
it's
really.
not too bad. I mean, you I've always debated, like, when you come to that point where they move out, the carpet is in bad shape. Do you replace the carpet? Do you, maybe replace it with hardwood floors or
Mhm.
luxury vinyl or whatever? And maybe you have some ideas on that too. Now, just from a durability standpoint, which one or what you like to do, because it's going to be costly either way. And,
Mhm.
carpet only lasts so long, no matter how good they take care of it. So,
And even the best tenants, well, it doesn't. I shouldn't say the best tenants. The best anybody with the best intentions in the world, you end up with troubles with carpet. I mean, especially with animals. Oh my God, I've had some bad ones with animals, but I don't. I like heavy duty vinyl myself, but I
yeah.
I don't. I can install vinyl flooring. I would do it in my own home if I had to, if it was like a square room, or I wouldn't want to do it in like something where you had to cut out around an island and everything. But yeah, I really like heavy duty vinyl. I just long term in rentals, it seems to hold up. It's either that or hardwood, because at least hardwood you can refinish, but vinyl tends to be a little cheaper, I think. But
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I've installed hardwood before, but only my own home. But I've seen where, people will do things that you never think of. Like, I had um, tenants that were lifting weights in a room that had, the traditional 3/4 inch hardwood,
oh,
and they were doing, like barbells and then just basically dropping them. So it's like you had these huge dents and scratches in the wood, and it's like, what? It's really hard to even sand that out and redo it. So
oh yeah, we had one. I went up. I got a call from a lady out of town. She's like, "Would you come up and take care of it?" I'm like, "Sure." And they had taken and boxed off this entire room that they were growing drugs in, and just had completely destroyed it. Like carpet, ceiling, it didn't matter. It was just a mess.
oh yeah.
Know Your Joe just said, "How are property values in South Carolina? Has there been any major shifts in the values?"
Yeah.
You can talk about that. I'd love to hear about it, because it seems
Yeah,
to
like
be the
like
story
most
everywhere.
places. I mean, things have gone crazy. I would say, especially on the lower end, maybe the high end properties, two and 300 and $400,000 properties maybe haven't moved that much, but on the lower end, like 150,000 or less, those have gone up 20-30% in the last couple of
Oh,
years. They've gone up a lot. And so, and the other thing is, because the demand is so high, if you want to buy a place, normal, especially if it's on the lower end, normally they want a cash offer. They don't want any contingencies. It's just very much a seller's market. It's tough.
I never thought of that. So they basically want you to, well, like basically pay cash up front, and take it without any inspections, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there are some that will, let you inspect it, but don't plan on them fixing anything. Like, if you do an inspection and find this or that or the other, a lot of times there's a clause where you can just basically walk away if it's really bad. But
Yeah.
it used to be that was like a leverage thing where, if you had an inspection done, there were certain things that need to be done. You could ask them to do that as part of the deal. And now it's like, well, do you want it or not? So
Right. Take it or leave it.
yeah,
In my hometown, well, where I grew up on the East Coast of Nova Scotia, you my entire life, adult life, child life, if you spend $100,000 on a home, you could basically buy a mansion there. Like, I mean, stuff was cheap. and property in the country. And I mean, when I say the middle of nowhere, I don't mean like the cute, quaint middle of nowhere. I mean
Yeah.
like the worst, you could buy house land with many acres for, 30 or $40,000, And I thought somebody had posted this as a joke. This is a few months back. And it was a house that there's no way it would ever be renovated. I mean, you could see daylight through the ceiling. There was trees growing up through it. And it was on like a half an acre of land. And I know this road. Like, I mean, there's no redeeming qualities there at all. Half an acre, and they wanted $70,000 for it.
Wow.
And I thought it was a joke. And no, they even the realtor even took the time to write one of those cushy write-ups, how realtors make everything look charming and quaint,
Oh,
and I was like, just put it up there, be like, listen, the market's hot, we're selling this, that's not worth it for what it is, take it or leave it.
Mhm. Would that be a property that you'd buy and just tear down the house, or is it actually fixable?
I I don't know. I personally would never want to tackle it. I think it's beyond. I think the main reason they were selling it with the structure still on it was because there's some grandfathering allowed there. You probably wouldn't need to have a septic inspection. Electrical might technically not be as expensive to get hooked up because there's a property there,
Mhm.
but I'm not sure. It was astronomical. Like that property 10 years ago when we moved out here would have sold for 10 or $15,000,
Yeah.
So, but
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's the same. I think it's pretty much like that in the US right now, where if you go on to, gosh, who has those good charts? I don't remember if it's Zillow or maybe is it Truly? I don't know if you have the same ones up there, but like it'll show over time the value of the home, and it's like it'll be bumping along at, say it's 100 grand, it'll be bumping along at that rate for like the past 8 years, and then the last 2 years you show the thing going up like an amusement park ride. I mean, it would be like, say, 90,000, and um, over 2 years they would have it listed for like 140 or something.
there's
You
got
know,
to be a correction coming, don't you think? There
oh
has
yeah,
to be. Yeah.
there is. I'm not sure how these homes are appraising for what they do if people need to get a loan or whatever. That's where I think.
And I'm sure the local government will be able to, pull in some more tax dollars that way. You know what I mean? At
Mhm.
least in the short term. But
Yeah.
Martinson family said the worst issue they ever had was renting. They got a call several years ago on Christmas Eve that the house was burning down. So that's horrible. If you want to elaborate on that, Martinson family, in the comments, go ahead. And Know Your Joe, we got all kinds of questions. So if you don't mind, I'll ask you another one here. And says, how much do you set aside for future repairs and revisions? That's a great question.
That
And
is a
how do
good
you
one.
do that? Yeah.
Um, I would say when you're first starting out and you're getting a house ready to rent, I would make it as perfect as I could from a mechanical standpoint. Not, maybe not appearance, but of course have it painted and everything. But if there's anything that's sketchy at all, like leaking plumbing or electrical work or whatever, get all that done, because trying to do that after the fact when people are in there is just so expensive, because um, they're living there, so you have to get it done. You have to get it done
Mm,
quickly, and sometimes that might be on a Sunday or whatever. So, as far as setting aside money, you probably want to have, I don't know, it would vary, maybe, at least some money, maybe $500, maybe more. I had one where I had to replace the HVAC system, and it was about $5,000. And it's not like you can say, "Hey, can you hold up on that for a few weeks till I save enough money up to,"
hmm
so you got to be ready for that. I don't know if you have a recommendation on that based on what you've seen, but
Oh man, like it's tough. Like uh, you know what, on work, first off, you're absolutely right. Get things done before the tenants move in there. I hate working around people in general. And it always takes three times as long, and you have to be three times as careful. And nothing ever seems to, I don't know. When the house is empty and you're working, it always seems like parts are there. You can always get parts, but when you need it done for somebody living in a place, it's like, oh, it's going to be 3 weeks for that widget that you need for the furnace, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? And
Hmm.
on multiple occasions, I've had the landlords put the tenants up in hotels for a couple of nights just to get them out of there. If it's really, we had to fix a sewer line one time, cut down through the floor. So I don't know. It's tough. Like, yeah, and you can't always do it. Sometimes you just got to go in and fix it while they're there. But do you, do you have a percentage? Like, how much out of each month's rent would you say you would use for upkeep and expenses and stuff like that?
I try to do, roughly maybe 10% of
Mhm.
what I'm getting through proceeds, to save. So you should always plan on something going on every month. So, it might only be, $50 or $100 or something, but you should try to save something towards that because there's all kinds of things that come up, plumbing stuff. I had once where we had a lot of rain and there was a big tree in the front yard that started leaning after that. Wasn't going to fall in the house, but they were kind of concerned. And it was tall and it was near power lines, so it was like $800 to remove that tree.
Mhm.
It wasn't anything you were planning on doing, but you have to kind of be ready for some of that stuff. So,
Do you ever find I had actually the biggest landlord I work for, he said you almost always have the most issues when they're newly moved in. Like in that first month to 2 months, they seem to always find the little, and I understand it. I'm not being complaining. It just seems you almost have to plan on a little extra money or a little extra work when people first move in.
yeah, I think that's good. And there's always the you know, conflict between, is there really an issue there or, what? But in most cases, I would rather have them tell me, hey, it's wet under the kitchen sink, there's something going on, than to just say, huh, and leave it. And then all that gets all messed up over time with water damage, so there's plus and minuses of them telling you. And normally I think you're right. They would find out when they first move in. So,
Do you ever I get that too, like, oh wow, I thought there was a bit of a leak under the sink, and you go in there and you can tell it's been leaking for like 6 months and it's full of mildew and the wood is rotten and it stinks. And then all of a sudden you've got an issue, and
oh, yeah.
yeah, you're absolutely right. I would much prefer having someone call and be like, hey, just an issue, just want to let you know. I'd rather keep in contact. Though, sometimes you get nervous, you're like, oh, they're a model tenant, I haven't heard from them in a year. But then sometimes you're like, I wonder, it just gets you nervous.
Right.
That's all.
The other problem is, and I'm sure you've seen this, where the tenants will take on the job it's themselves. Something simple like say they damage the wall from hanging pictures or something pulls out of the wall, and instead of doing it right with spackle or whatever, they'll use like tape or something, and so
Yeah.
that's what happened with the last one. And so when I went in to paint, this person was like really good at using clear packing tape on every little hole. And you pull that tape because you're not going to paint over that, right?
No.
Pull that
And then
tape off, and it just makes more of a mess. It's like, you just left it. I'm okay with, you know, fixing little things.
so there's a question here. Maybe you can, I don't quite understand it, and I might just be thick. So if somebody needs, it says, do you charge per square foot or general market value in that a 322 goes for about, does that make sense? Or is that,
If I'm determining what the rent's going to be,
I think that must be what he means. Yeah. Sorry.
yeah,
And Joe, go ahead and know your Joe if you want to clarify too. But yeah, go. Yeah.
yeah. I don't really do square footage as much. I mean, the main thing that I find is uh, how many bedrooms it has and how many bathrooms it has. If it's 1,200 square feet or 1,500, you might get a little bit more, but it's really going to be based on the area that it's located. So, um, a lot of times you do simple things like if you drive by it and look at the place, drive around that area and see what the rest of the area looks like. Maybe there's some for rent signs on other yards and call them and ask them what they're charging.
That's
You
a
know,
good idea. Sure.
it'll give you an idea. So not so much square foot, but I would say the features like he has down here. She has down here, the
Yep.
number of bedrooms, number of baths. If it has
Okay.
a garage, that type of thing.
And yeah, this we've had more questions tonight. This is great. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Said without checking the land, I think that might be landlord acts. Can you not do a quarterly home inspection to check these things? I think he was talking about where I was worried about a place for a year, but I don't know. What do you think? Like, I've always been to I don't know. I like to give tenants their privacy if I can, and if things seem to be going smooth, I do the old slow drive by once in a while.
Mhm.
What do you like? How often do you
Um,
do inspections, or do you? Or
I I don't normally. I use a rental management company now, and
okay.
they'll they'll they may try to do something once a year. If you have other things like say like a termite inspection or things like that, the person they might send out, they'll like look around and give them basic feedback like, hey, I think maybe this needs to be done, or this railing is loose or whatever it might be. But generally, no, leave them alone, because most of the tenants, they're going to tell you if something is wrong, I think. But it's not a bad idea. I don't know if I don't normally do it on a regular basis, so maybe you do. I'm not sure.
I, we I don't know. I guess for the people who aren't sure, like I just do property management. I don't own any rentals yet, but we do a lot of that for them. But I find in this, the tenants that pay their rent tend to not be the tenants that do all the damage, and it usually is the first sign. They normally get on the radar when they're behind in their rent, and then all of a sudden you're like, if that's the first step, then you're kind of wondering, okay, how are things going? Maybe I need to keep a closer eye on it.
Mhm.
And I take a run by all my properties at least on a weekly basis that I look after anyway, just to kind of, nothing's burnt down. It doesn't seem to be a meth lab, in there or anything like that, right? But
Right.
yeah, but it is good. It's nice to I have, to me it seems like it's nice to give them their space too, because everybody likes to have a quiet place to live, and if they're paying their rent, usually seems okay. Hey.
That's right. I think
Um,
that's good.
uh, oh, Dylan's here from Steady Presence. Hey, Dylan. And Know Your Joe says, do you qualify future potential rentals? Background check via association word of mouth or ... Yeah, that's a good question. How do you do that, or what do you do there, Chris?
Again, right now, going through a property manager, that's one of the nice things that they'll do is all the upfront screening. Um, so that I usually rely on them to do that as far as background checks. Yeah.
So talk about the property management companies you do. Like, have you had to switch between? Are you happy with them? What do they cost, percentage wise, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I've only worked with two different ones. One I had to, um, I'll say basically fire, because I didn't like the way they were handling things. I had some issues where they would either not talk to me before fixing something,
Oh,
or they were slow getting back to the renters. And I'm like, oh, I can't have that. The renters need a good place to live. But as far as cost, your mileage may vary, but in where where I am, it's normally somewhere between 10 and 15% of the gross rent is what they would charge for management fees every month to take care of it. So, but they would do, like you're saying, all the screening. They would handle um, the repairs as far as who to call. And normally, um, if you work with a good rental management agency, they have a whole crew of folks that they use on a regular basis. So,
mhm.
you can get things done really quickly. Like the one that I'm working with now, they have a company that it's just excellent. They do electrical, plumbing, and HVAC. So what's nice about
Oh,
that is if they go out for like an HVAC call, they might say, "Hey, also, can you look at the one of the outlets in one of the bedrooms doesn't seem to be working?" And boom, they'll just take care of that while they're out there. So you don't get all these separate fees having somebody come out to do things, which is really nice.
I got to remember that, because yeah, that's basically just the one service call, and then just your labor costs beyond that. That could add up over the
Oh,
years.
Totally. Yep.
Because what we run into here quite often, you guys have natural gas where you live or
We
not?
do. We
Okay.
do.
Because
Yep.
it's every house here has it. And a lot of times the guy that does the natural gas isn't the guy that does the electrical or isn't the guy that does the plumbing. So you got to end up having a couple of guys in for that kind of stuff, and that gets expensive. Every time you got to call a guy, it's like, oh yeah, it's another $150 flat rate service call plus, right? And
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
yeah, but you've been pretty happy with them so far.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yep.
So how long has it been since you bought a property?
Probably about three years now, maybe a little bit more. And it's just because the market is so crazy. I mean, it's just such a seller's market right now. It's hard to justify the cost of the properties and actually, make a cash flow on them because they're just so expensive right now.
So maybe take us back. Say let's pretend like the market isn't crazy like it is, but let's go back 36 months when you bought your last one. How did you decide what to buy, where to buy it, that kind of stuff?
Okay. Yeah, the last one was probably within 5 miles of where I live, and I happened to come across one that had been uh, on the market for, gosh, probably 6 months at a time, and it was actually a foreclosure, so bank foreclosure.
Oh,
So that makes it a little bit better. Now you don't have that as much anymore. It nowadays you'll see, even if it's a foreclosure, they'll say, "Give us your highest and best offer within the
yep.
next 5 days or whatever," and that's it. It's like, and whoever can offer cash and no contingencies are going to get it. But back then it was different. So because it was a foreclosure, of course, it's usually a little bit less money. And yeah, that was the last one I did. So
So close to you, that's kind of important. So you're not miles away.
yeah, it is. I've considered, looking at properties up to maybe about 2 hours away. If I can find a good property manager, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
It's just I haven't found anything uh, lately that would suit that. So
So what do you find? Like, what's the best? I don't know, cost to rent ratio, like 3 bed, 2 bath, 2 bedroom, 1 bath. Like, what do you look for in a rental that way?
well, that's a really good one. And this is something my dad always tried to do is always try to find something with 3 bedrooms. So
Okay.
I only rent single family homes, so I don't do duplexes and things like that. Not that I want, I just haven't. But I think if you can find something that's 3 bedroom, 1 bath, or 3 bedroom, 2 bath, I think that's good. Um, they're depending, if it's in a good location, maybe closer to a downtown or something, and it's only 2 bedroom, 1 bath, that works too. But I find that 3 bedrooms is kind of like your,
Sweet
you know,
spot.
yeah, is where you'd want to start.
Okay.
Um,
I'm guessing nobody complains about having an extra bedroom. They can turn
mhm.
it into a little gym or a home sewing room or something, or if they have a baby. But it's a lot harder to deal with something that's 2 bedrooms when you need three, I suppose, right?
Yeah, I think so too. So
Um,
that's kind of where I start. Yeah.
Know Your Joe says, have you ever considered commercial real estate at all?
I haven't. No, you kind of stick with what you know,
Mhm.
and I'm sure there's money to be made with that, but I haven't. I'm not sure where the commercial real estate market is now, especially for office space and stuff. With a lot of people work from home, it might be, maybe it's different in Canada. I don't know, but yeah.
I think it's funny. I never really thought about it till you mentioned it, but it is commercial real estate right now is like the complete opposite of residential real estate. Like it's completely bottomed out and flatlined, and we've had a 1-2 punch up here in Alberta. I mean, we've been 5 years now dealing with the downturn of the oil when the oil crashed there about 5 years ago. So
Mhm.
we already seen a huge outflux. Is that the right term? Outflux? I don't know. Anyway, we've seen a huge leaving of the city. Like Calgary was like at 100, I want to say it was like 101% office space capacity at one time, with all the big,
Mm.
and then it was down to, I can't remember the numbers. I'd be pulling them out of my head if but it was down really bad before COVID, and now it's, so it's tough. I don't know. I got, you're probably right though. You do what right? So,
Mhm. Yeah.
and so Becky and I, that's my wife. We actually, part of the reason that I was wanted to have somebody on to talk about this is because selfish reasons, of course, but we're looking at purchasing our first couple of rentals. We have a bit of a thing there. So what kind of tips do you have for new landlords or potential new landlords or that kind of stuff? Like, where do you start?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, understand, your goals as far as, are you looking for cash flow? Are you looking for maybe a slight amount of cash flow with appreciation over time?
Hmm.
Usually sometimes those go together, but normally, if you grade a property like an A property, a B or C property, uh, your C properties are probably going to cash flow better, but you're going to probably have more turnover and, that type of thing, where something like, say, an A property, you may barely cash flow, but you're looking at it appreciating over time and maybe selling it within 5 years or 10 years. All
Hmm.
depends on what you're looking for. So I would say, start with that. Um, and then, for me, I like renting single family homes. So, if that's a consideration, look at that. But,
So do you? For me, being kind of handy, I kind of like the idea of buying maybe a bit of a dumpy one and fixing it up, a bit. Have you looked at that, or have you done that at all?
oh yeah.
Or Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, I love the homes that um, cosmetically look awful, but
Yeah.
are not hard to fix. Like for me, a lot of the homes, there are homes that use gas, but a lot of them are electric. So if you have a home and say the HVAC system is pretty good and the roof is good,
Hmm.
then the rest of it really doesn't matter. There could be giant holes in the wall, windows broken, whatever. That's all easy stuff to fix and not expensive either. But if you got to put a new HVAC system in, um, like I said, that might be 5, 6, 7 grand. A roof, same. So those are the things I look at. The last one I had, I replaced all the windows in it, and of course all the flooring and the painting and all the drywall stuff. Put new kitchen counters in, things like that. Those really aren't too bad as far as cost. It's the main mechanical things. Like if you look at an older home that's built in the 60s, it might have like screw in type fuses and stuff, and maybe 50 amp panel or something. And
Mm.
so even if you, and say it didn't even have air conditioning, even if you wanted to add that, you're going to have to upgrade all the electrical too. And that gets really costly. So those are the things I look at. If you find a home, at least in the US, that's, maybe built in the 70s or 80s,
Hmm.
that can be a lot better than a home that's built in the 50s as far as the electrical and things like that. So, I kind of start with that stuff. And then the cosmetic things, like I said, are not that not that difficult to fix. So
That's great advice. Yeah. So, good bones. I always said that to Becky. You want a house with good bones, but so HVAC, roof, and electrical are your big ones. If they're in good shape, like the rest is spit and polish, right?
yeah, somewhat. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. I know. It's everything costs,
It-
but yeah.
yeah. A lot of it. Yeah. It's not as costly, or, especially things like painting and things you can do yourself. So
Did you do countertops and things yourself too, or?
I have, I'm not great at it, but I've learned it over the years. I've not done like, uh, where you have like a slate countertop or things like that. Just the kind you can get from like Home Depot, where it's already has the miter cuts in the corners and things, and
Mhm.
just measure and fit and get it all nice and level and that type of thing. But you kind of learn as you go. Like, I had where I had a countertop that went. I had to make a cutout for the sink, which was fun. I measured it like 5 or 6 times.
Oh no.
Right.
Yep.
And then the countertop went to a corner and then around a corner and then got to the stove area and stuff. Well, that corner, that miter, I was like, well, how do you do this? So I look on YouTube and they're like, well, there's these little bolts underneath that pull it all together. And people say, you can put silicone in the joint and pull it together. Well, I saw one video. They're like, when you pull that together and the silicone starts squeezing out of the joint, don't instinctively just take a paper towel or whatever and wipe that, because you'll never get it like completely clean, and you'll always leave, the clear silicone on there. They say just squeeze it together, let it squeeze out, and let it just sit there, and then come back the next day with a razor and just cut it off, and it's perfect. So things like that you learn to do make a lot of difference. Small things like that. Well, I mean, I'm sure you've seen that stuff where it's just like there's a right way to do things, and that's a simple one. But or like I don't know if you've ever used or know, Tim, if you use a saber saw to cut out the hole for the sink,
Mhm.
they make a blade where the teeth, the saber saw, the teeth are going up and
Mhm.
down. Right? They
Yep.
make a blade where the teeth are angled downward. So you mark it on the top, and you rip down through the countertop, and it doesn't splinter the countertop. It pulls it. I don't know what you call that, but it's a blade. It's like a reverse blade. So
Yeah, and it
all
does a really smooth
it
cut.
doesn't matter.
That's cool. Yeah, and so I can't remember who makes them, but yeah, those I love that. Like, so what are your favorite repairs to do? Because I can tell you enjoy it. Obviously, it's neat. I like when people light up and they get excited. I'm like, oh, he likes doing repairs. That's cool. So
I mean, things like that, or you know, uh, there's all kinds of tricks like we talked about, cabinet doors being loose, or just interior doors coming loose, like pulling out of the hinges. You're like, how does that happen? I put a 3-inch screw in there, and
hmm
yet they pull it out. And so I've talked to people that use everything from, like, they'll take like a golfer's tee, and shove
hmm
it in there and break the head off, and then run your screw back in, and it tightens everything up. Or I, I think someone on the LFTN community said something about using toothpicks.
toothpicks and wood glue,
Yeah.
zip ties. I've used the drywall anchors are one of the best. The screw-in white ones, like the
Oh,
big
okay.
ones, but they make a hinge anchor that I love. It looks like a cone,
Okay.
and you just put it in the hole, tap it in as far as you can. Don't tap it hard because it'll break off. Tap it in till it stops, snap it off, 100%. It'll fix it every single time, unless the hole is like, unless once in a blue moon you'll have one that pulls out. Ted's in here tonight. He's a handyman down in Florida as well. He says he uses toothpicks and glue, but
Oh, there you
these
go.
these hinge anchors are the best I've come across. They're expensive. They're like, I don't know, $6 for a 4-pack or something like that. But I mean, that's peanuts when you figure out, how much hair a person's going to lose trying to fix them yourself when you pull your own hair out, right? So
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
But there's things like, just like you're saying, I had one where I put, what's that stuff called? Like the closet made, uh,
Like MD or
closet.
yeah, melamine shelving, right? Is
Yeah.
that what you mean? Yep.
And you're thinking, okay, they're going to put jeans and sweaters and stuff up on the shelf, and they put something super heavy on it, and they rip the whole thing out. And so you're like, okay, well, I can't really put oversized anchors in those same holes because it's really torn out. And but just plan on that kind of stuff happening, where you got to figure out, patch all those holes and move everything over, hopefully to the next stud that you can tie it in, and redo it, because those kind of things happen. So
Everybody who follows the channel knows I don't really like IKEA, and I definitely don't like IKEA furniture. Stay away from it for rentals. It's yeah. But Know Your Joe says stay away from older homes with cast iron main sewage lines and older homes with galvanized supply pipes. Have you run into any of that at all?
I haven't. My father had that, excuse me, with a home that had some, I guess, the cast iron pipes. And I guess the issue was they just they rust out over time, right? I mean, I don't know if you've dealt with it much, but
I've dealt with it a lot, but the biggest, I mean, they can become brittle, but the biggest thing is that they collect on the interior. So the interior diameter gets smaller and smaller over time. So
mm,
once rust starts and buildup starts, then of course, it's like a clogged artery in your heart, right? Or
oh,
whatever. And so then eventually, like my mom and dad's house is, well, the oldest part is almost 100 years old, but
oh
even the,
wow.
the newer part is from the 50s. And they, for years, have had slow moving sewer and water because their supply pipe from the standpipe out at the road to inside the house is galvanized,
Hmm.
and their old sewer line is cast iron, and
Mm.
both of those are notorious for corroding on the inside, so you eventually lose and lose and lose, and they just have never wanted to spend the, yeah, it's only probably 1,500 or 2,000 or whatever, but to get their front yard dug up, that 20 feet out to the road or 30 feet, because anyway, they've learned to live with it, but they are gonna, I think maybe this year or next, finally. But cast iron is a miserable bugger because it can just break. Like I told you about the one where we had to cut down through the floor in the kitchen,
Oh
and
yeah.
that was just a completely unsupported, probably 15-foot length of 3-inch cast iron, and eventually it just broke in half.
Oh
And yeah,
wow.
so it happens. But
Yeah,
um,
and I don't know if there's a certain time frame, okay, in the 60s they did this, in the 70s they did this, in the 80s they did that, but I would assume the older the home is, the more chance it has of having that type of materials in there for your plumbing. So
and we ran into clay pipe too on one house. We
yeah.
we bought, yeah, our second house we ever bought anyway out east was 130 years old, and the sewer line was octagon clay pipe in 4-foot sections.
Oh my
So they
God.
were all, oh yeah, and it collapsed or shifted, and so we didn't even have a sewer line that would run out anymore. So it was, yeah.
Yeah.
But Chris Dixon, this is great. I forgot about this tip, but he said when we did our house closets, sorry, when we did our house closet walls, they were all covered with good one side 1/2 inch plywood, so you can put a hook or shelf anywhere.
Oh wow. That's
That is a great idea.
that is.
And I've heard about.
Do you
Oh, go ahead.
normally do you normally cover that with drywall then, or you just leave it?
I don't. Yeah, Chris, what did you do? Like I've seen it done both ways, but something that I was listening to a radio show a couple of years back, and they were talking about building houses to live in for a lifetime. So the idea was that they were putting reinforced plywood behind drywall in areas that eventually would need grab bars or railings or supporting, lift chairs to go up. So they were basically, building a house for a 25-year-old couple to live in until they're 75. So there would be, and so I think I'm guessing it's behind the drywall, but Chris
Mhm.
will chime in. If not, he'll send me an email tonight to let me know. He's good like that, so I appreciate it. But either way, that is great.
Oh yeah, I've not done that, but that's a good idea.
And Know Your Joe says our current home has cast iron main sewage line, built in 1978. Want to find someone to remedy this? Oh, okay, yeah, because he asked. Actually, go back a little bit further. I'd seen this. I haven't seen it done, but you can. They have. Have you seen where they reline cast iron pipe with that resin?
I've heard of it, but I've not experienced it. No.
I haven't either. I think it's cool. I haven't, Joe. So I'll if I can find some information on it. I know there's some pretty cool videos out there on it, but yeah, it's pretty neat. And I guess cost wise, it's worth not needing to dig up or whatever. But
It almost sound. I mean, I know it's not the same, but it almost sounds like taking an old bathtub and relining it with, recovering it with some kind of ceramic or something. But
yeah, and you can do that with if you ever run into old toilet flanges as well. If you get the old nasty ones that are getting kind of hard to deal with, you can actually get a rubber sleeve flange that fits down inside the old one. It does restrict the flow a little bit, but it gives you all new holes to put screws in and things like that.
that's important. That's good.
Yeah, it really, so, and I bet if Ted's still in here, I bet he's seen it done before because he knows a lot about the plumbing. But
Okay.
and Know Your Joe says we're in the process of redoing the bathroom, added 2x6 supports in the walls for grab bars. Exactly. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you have any concerns? Any handicap kind of issues with any of your rentals or anything? Or
No,
no?
Mm-mm. No,
No ramps or anything. You don't. Yeah.
no, no.
What
Uh,
about have you had any horror stories at all? I know you said you've had pretty good tenants, but what's the kind of the I don't know, the worst situation you've dealt with or
um, really, really nothing too bad. I mean, I've had where, um, people say they have one pet, a small dog, it's very nice, whatever. And then when they move out, you find a lot of damage either, to doors or floors and things like that, to fix where it's like it's obvious they keep them in a room and the dog will like scratch the door and like, just totally tear up the wall and the molding and the flooring and everything. So, just general things like that. I mean, most of the time people are, they do the right thing, so that's good.
do you allow pets?
I do if they got to be under a certain weight and size. I did have this was a long time ago where rented to folks that had cats. Supposedly had one cat, but you know,
Yeah, I know.
that's five. And there was finding the litter box issues and things. And I had where the cat damaged the hardwood floors and the walls and stuff. And that's not easy to I had somebody come in and fix it and they had to cut out the floor and the subfloor. It was so bad, replace that. And then luckily I had some an extra box of hardwood, the tongue and groove type hardwood, and he weaved it back in so it didn't look like he just cut out a square and did an excellent job. That's not cheap to do that, especially if you don't know how to.
You did great. So I used to sell building supplies, and what people would always do is they'd come in to get their laminate or their hardwood floor, and they would buy, like I always tell them, buy 10% more than you need because you're going to have waste and stuff, right? But invariably, they'd have one full box left. And at the end of the job, they'd come down proud as punch to the hardware store and they're like, I'd like to return this, please. And I'm like, let me tell you a story. I will gladly give you your money back. But what's not going to happen is in 3 years, when you drop a hot whatever on it and burn a hole through your floor, and you come back to me and say, hey, do you have any of that flooring? I'm going to tell you it's discontinued. You're never going to find it again. So take that box home for the $50 it's going to cost you, put it up overhead in the garage, and leave it there. If
Yeah.
it sits there for 30 years, you've got it.
Yeah, and it's the same with tile too, right?
Oh, yeah.
If I had one where we were actually getting it together to sell, and I had like maybe two tiles that were cracked on the floor, and the rest of it was perfect. But it was like white, 6-inch square tiles. I'm like, well, how hard could this be? So the one that was broken, I chipped out as much as I could and took it down to, big box stores. I'm like, it was either the tile they had was a different finish or different. You wouldn't believe the different shades of white. And I'm like, what? And I just couldn't find it. And I ended up going to a specialty tile store, and the guy went back to his, warehouse and found like that exact tile. And I mean, I would have paid $50 for that one piece of tile because I only needed like two of them. And I
Hmm.
didn't want to rip up the whole floor. And I didn't want to put a new tile in that was a different color because it'd be completely obvious. So definitely with tile, it's so cheap. Just buy an extra box and keep it. I
And
mean,
they never go bad.
no, right, right.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know on hardwood if you put that out in your garage or something, you have heat and I don't know if that changes it or not, but I
yeah,
think with
I
tile,
don't know. We my wife we just built well, she opened a daycare about a year ago, and we did a lot of renovations, and it's in the basement of an old church which is now a photography studio. And we came across a box of old beautiful cedar clapboard that had been sitting in an unheated area. It's still got the labels on it. I put it up overhead in my garage. I don't know what I'll ever do with it. Like, it's going to make a beautiful project for somebody someday, but
yeah,
it's antique stuff. And
yeah,
it's as good as the day it was built or milled, I should say. But
yeah. Wow,
do you
that's
ever deal with staple up tiles, or what they call, like those 12 by 12 or 12 by 24 tiles that just go on the ceiling?
no, I haven't. Mm-mm.
Well, my dad, they've had them in their house for years, and he had a little water damage when I was working at the hardware store. And he come down one day and he says, "Can you get me a couple of these tiles?" And he brought one down, and it turned out it was a 16 by 16. and
Really?
they hadn't made them since the 70s. So probably asbestos, who knows? Anyway, I said, Dad, I can't get them. They haven't made them in 30 years. He says, you know what? Just hang on. So he went home that night up in the attic, and he still had 2 boxes sitting up in the attic from when he did the work, whatever it was, 30 some years prior, So
Wow. Yeah,
yeah,
it
acoustic
definitely
tile,
helps to
Ted
do
says.
that
Yeah.
for sure.
But
That's such a good tip.
yeah, it is. Just keep things set aside. And you were talking about pet mess and things like that. But just
Mhm.
about a year ago, my March work last year was for a rental. A young couple had lived in this house, and they had 2 or 3 young dogs that they locked in one bedroom day
Mhm.
in and day out, and completely destroyed the hardwood floor. Like, I mean, like beyond repair. And so the lady asked me, the owner, she said, can you go in and give me a price on repair and everything? And I said, yeah. So first thing we got to do is we got to strip all the hardwood out in that room, and strip out probably whatever soaked through into the subfloor, and then start from scratch. And just before I started, she called me up, and I try to keep an open mind. But, when customers say, hey, I got a product I want you to try, you kind of roll your eye sometimes.
Mhm.
She said, could you try this? And the product was called Decon 30. I bought it on Amazon, and it's in a gallon, and it smells like iodine. And they use it in hospitals. It's made from, of all things, oil of thyme, like the ingredient. And so I did 3 sprays of that on the hardwood floor, and I let it sit for 2, 3 days each time. And it eliminated it doesn't just eliminate smells, but it eats the bacteria as well.
Oh, wow.
And so we were able to, of course, we couldn't, like, you couldn't leave the floor exposed because it was stained, right? But the
Mhm.
smell and the bacteria was gone. So at that point, we were able to just laminate floor over top of it, and probably saved her thousands of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
But, we still had to cover up beautiful hardwood floor, but it was better than tearing up hardwood and the underlay.
So when you put the laminate on top, do you have to cut the bottom of the doors off and stuff to allow for that extra gap a little?
Sometimes, yeah. What I normally do around, it depends. Like, in some rooms, I used my little oscillating tool, and I kind of undercut all the moldings.
Those things
You
are
haven't? Oh, I was. Yeah. Do you love them as much as I do?
awesome. Oh my God. Yeah,
What's your best use for it? What do you use it for?
that that for sure, cutting, molding and stuff at the bottom or cutting, bottom of the doors. Just getting into tight places to cut things. If you got to notch out a 2x4 or something to fit
Hmm.
something in, oh, they're great for all of that.
Do you ever use spray foam? Like, the expanding insulating foam?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have. I have some, not tons, but yeah.
When I install windows, like,
Mhm.
you put them in, and then you spray foam the gaps all the way around, let it sit. And of course, I always spray the hell out of it, way more than I should. And so the next day, it always looks like, right. And I had a hell of a time. Even a really sharp utility knife is a bit of a pain in the ass to get it to trim, and to get it to trim nice. Well, that oscillating tool, zip, in 10
Oh,
seconds. And if you've ever installed a window, and you put shims in there, the
mhm.
wooden shims, and you got to cut them off or break them off. Well, use your oscillating tool, and you're done.
I've done that. I've kind of gone, speaking of things like shims, I don't know. Do you normally use the wood ones, or I've used the ones that are like black composite?
Do you
Called-
like that? I haven't tried them yet. I don't
They're
know if.
they're good. They the way they're set, they snap pretty nicely and clean.
Okay.
And supposedly, I don't know if they're more durable or not, but I like using those now.
Hmm. I will give them a shot. I am a sucker. I do tool reviews too. So I'm a sucker for anything new. I just love to try it. But yeah. And if you're still in here, let me know if you've tried them too, because yeah, so is there any, like, I know right now the market is pretty insane, but are there any, like, low cost? I know there's obviously no cost, but what would be like a low cost way to kind of enter the rental market, or what would you think? Or is there even such
Mm.
an option in this day and age?
Um, Not sure. I mean, a lot of times they're asking for cash. I mean, if you do financing in the States, normally they're gonna want to require at least 20% down. So, I mean, if you can handle that, that's of course better than outlaying cash if you don't have it. But I don't know of one that's like low cash, no cash now. I mean, I guess you could do a land contract with somebody if they want to sell, but yeah, I've not done things like that, so I don't
Have you
know.
ever read Rich Dad Poor Dad?
I
With
I have, yeah. It's been years, but I have, yeah.
I read it last summer, and I mean, sometimes you almost wonder how much of what he says is 100% true and how much of it is, I'm not saying fabricated, but maybe misremembered with, rose-colored glasses of the past, but he talked about basically buying things in auction or like foreclosure sales and things like that, but basically buying them on just with pennies on the dollar. I forget exactly how he explained it, but it was basically like he would he would buy them cheap, take out a loan for the 5% or 10%, whatever he needed for the, how most auctions are like, you got to pay 10% or 20% up front, and you got to come up with the next bit in the next 30 days or whatever. He would do that and then turn around and sell the property before he even had title on the property, and was able to, I mean, that's risky business, but he had nothing to lose at the time. And it was, obviously it worked out for him.
Yeah, I've heard of people doing that. I've not ventured into that because most of the stuff that I buy, I'm going to try to keep long term, especially if it cash flows. So,
Like the ones that we have an opportunity on right now are pretty, like they're low end. They need some work, and I'm okay with that because I know a guy, we can
mhm.
do some of that. But I don't know. I'm looking forward to, like, actually the couple that I do, we've got, I think it's 11 anyway. It's around a dozen rentals we do. They bought a bunch from a guy who basically just for years rented them as is, where is, like just the dirt cheap, lowest rentals. And so over the years, I worked for this couple. And as the previous tenants would move out, we would renovate each one. I mean,
Okay.
not like, not Taj Mahal good, but like really nice, new middle of the road laminate or vinyl floor. We'd paint, put in new bathroom fixtures, that kind of stuff. And now, um, every single rental has been redone. Only a couple need new furnaces. And we did this over, well, I worked for them for about 3 years. And before that, they did it for about 2 or 3 years before that. And,
Mhm.
now for, most places were kind of in that, maybe I'm thinking around that $10,000 range to bring up to looking really good, except for actually the one we're in. We originally rented from them and then bought it from them, but that one ended up needing all new electrical. But other than that one, everything was, in that $5,000 to $10,000 range, and then the rent was able to be quite a bit higher at that point, right?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, that's good.
So, what are your long-term plans for rental properties? Where do you? I know a lot of it depends on where the market is, and
I mean, as long as I can find properties in decent areas that will cash flow, I want to keep buying properties if I can.
Do you
Sure.
have a do you have an end goal in mind, like a number, how many you'd love to have sometime, or
Um, no, I mean, probably, I mean, it'd be nice to have, say, maybe 10,
okay.
um, just as a nice round number, but
Mhm.
no, I don't have any specific goals. I don't
Is
know.
that kind of your retirement plan too, or what do you think eventually?
Yeah, yeah. I would I would like to do that again because it's passive income, and if it'll support having a property manager take care of them, then it really frees up your time, you know. So um,
It's nice when your money works for you, eh?
yeah, oh
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely, and so yeah, it'd be a nice retirement thing for sure.
it's good. How many do you have a long-term goal? How much longer till you want to retire? You got a ways to go, or what do you think? I know we all think out loud, but
Gosh, I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever retire. I have too much fun, but
yeah, I love hearing that. That's friggin' awesome. Yeah, because I know I'm the same way. If you love what you do, you don't necessarily have to retire. You can just work on your own schedule a little bit more, right?
right, right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So if anybody has any more questions, throw them up here. Now we've been an hour and 5 minutes already. We've had a great, see, you get on here, get talking. If you're like me and you like the sound of your own voice, it's not so hard, right?
That's right. That's right.
So, and you're going to be at LFTN Spring Workshop, are you?
Yep. I'll be
That's
there for that. So that should be really good. I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be a nice event.
Do you do karaoke? Silence. Everybody hear that? Silence. Yes. No,
Uh,
I haven't.
I,
They just always talk about it. So
it's very fun. Yes,
yeah.
I
Okay.
will say that. I'm not like super karaoke-ish, but on occasion, if I get a few people to join me up there and I'm just kind of like one of the background singers, I'm okay with that. So yeah, it's really and at the spring workshop, it's just so the people are great, and by the time they get around to karaoke, everybody pretty much knows each other, and there's no, it's like no judgment zone kind of thing. So it's really fun. It's nice. It's a good
Sorry,
time.
Joe. Do you want to answer that one, Chris? What is LFTN? I say it like everybody should know, and there's a lot of people. There isn't the overlap. So sorry about that, but
So LFTN is Living Free in Tennessee, and if you had Nicole on, she could tell you how it all started. But it revolves around her podcast and the events that she puts on. Um, but people use that acronym or those letters to describe it. But it's Living Free in Tennessee, so you can do a search for that, and you'll bring up her podcast or YouTube channel and all
do
that
you want to
stuff.
know a funny story? I didn't listen to her podcast for a solid year because I thought it was for only people from Tennessee. And I didn't join her group because I was like, oh no, that must just be a Tennessee thing. And then I heard her complaining about it. She's like, I wonder if I should have changed my branding. I'm like, nah, I love it. It's a great name. And
Well,
once you realize it means she's the one living free in Tennessee, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense,
that's right. And the thing is, where I live, I'm a short distance away, but as far as like growing zones, like zone 6, zone 7, whatever, I'm in zone 7, and I believe they are too. So, just because you're not in Tennessee or 2 states over, you can still relate when they're like, okay, well, this week we're going to be putting out tomatoes because the last frost date was whatever. I'm like, hey, that's the same as what I have. So, you know, you can definitely relate even if you don't live in Tennessee or live, you know, on
that
the
was
east side.
something I never thought a lot about. But when we first, have you seen the Fireside Freedom thing that we're doing at all yet? I don't know if you
I
have.
haven't. No.
No, that's okay. So it's about 8 different podcast creators. We get together and do like kind of a joint podcast once a week. And I never thought about it, but when we first started getting together, I think there's about 5 or 6 of us that are kind of from the Midwest,
Mhm.
and they were all saying like, this is great because we don't really have a lot of representation in the podcast world. It's everybody's down like in the freedom end of things, like our stuff, Jack's in Texas and Nicole's in Tennessee, but we don't have anybody up in the frozen wasteland. And I get people a lot. Like I had somebody message me the other day. They're like, I'm from upstate New York and I relate a lot to the cold stuff you talk about. And I'm like, oh, that's cool.
That's right. That's right for sure. So yeah, I mean, everything that's covered in the podcast or in the YouTube channel or whatever. I mean, you can relate to all of it. It might just be that you plant your tomatoes in May instead of April, But other than that,
Or late June here. So
oh gosh, see, because my last frost date is like average last frost date is like April 8th or something like that.
it's about
Which
when I grew up in Nova Scotia, that's about what it was there too.
really okay.
Yeah, we live right on the ocean and we were like a microclimate. Other than maybe really southern Ontario and really southern BC, it's the warmest area for growing in the country in Canada. Like it was,
Interesting.
yeah, it was really nice. But out here, like I said, -20 in April sometimes, right? So usually not. Like we'll have warm days, and normally the snow has started melting by then. Because my snow contracts end at the end of March, but you never know what you're going to get. We have miserable weather here, and then it gets nice. So
How about your I guess your first frost date? Is that in October then or something or even
oh no, you September 1st, at the latest, sometimes into August. We have about
early?
3 months. That's really it. So it's like yeah, you can barely grow things like tomatoes and things like that. Like that's why this is a big crop area, because things like wheat and canola and barley and all that, they're pretty hardy to cold temperatures, you know,
Well,
they
you
can
can
start
plant
them.
winter wheat, right? So you can
Yeah.
get a head start on that. Yeah.
But it gets, you know, like it was 100. Oh, everybody's going to correct me when I say this, but it was over 110 degrees Fahrenheit here this summer as well. So, you know, we go from 110 and like, so it was 43 degrees Celsius. So we go from 43 degrees Celsius to minus 40 Celsius between the winter and summer. So
And that's it.
it,
It almost sounds like I had some friends that lived in Minnesota. It's kind of like that there, where extremely cold winters, and then the 2 weeks of summer they had were like boiling hot. So it's
we
amazing.
had about, yeah, we had about 10 days of the near 40 degrees Celsius temperatures last summer, but we have really nice summers. They're just short, you know, 3 months.
You ever have people say, "Gosh, I hope your summer falls on a weekend this year"?
Yeah. You know what's cool though is we don't get a lot of rain and we get zero humidity up here.
Okay.
So, like where I grew up in Nova Scotia, the summers were longer, but this we get way more sunny days out here. Like we it's kind of the sunniest place in Canada between Saskatchewan and Alberta. And we you know, this winter we've had a little bit of cloud cover, but for the most part we get a lot of sun and it feels really good. You know, like
Mhm.
mine honestly minus 40 here, normally minus 40. There's it's usually sunny for the most part and very little wind most times. Like we rarely get a lot of wind when it gets really cold. So, you
Yeah.
know,
Now, do you have? I'm trying to. Maybe it's not your area, but I always hear these horror stories about like it's black fly season or whatever that means, or is
we're
that more like
pretty
an Alaska thing or something?
that's Alaska and Nova Scotia, inland Nova Scotia had it a lot where I grew up too. But yes, Chris, we don't, you know what? It's pretty good place here. Like there's a few places in Alberta that have a lot of mosquitoes, but we don't have a ton of mosquitoes, barely any black flies. It's pretty good country to live in, you know. We don't even have any venomous snakes as long as you live above the Red Deer River.
Oh, really?
There is rattlesnakes in Alberta, but they're below. And there's even cactus in Alberta, but they're like this big. So
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Yeah. So we do have, yeah, where I am, we do have a variety of creepy crawlies plus snakes.
it's
I
too
guess,
goddamn cold up here. It's way
yeah,
too cold.
yeah, cottonmouth and
Oh,
gosh, I'm trying to think of what the other one is. It's like a not a very long steak. It's real stubby. But yeah, there are some poisonous snakes, and really, gosh, probably more down towards the coast of South Carolina. You have
sharks.
rattlesnakes. Well,
That'd be over the coast. Yeah.
rattlesnakes that get really big. I don't know the variety, but much bigger than the ones you'd have out west.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, and it's pretty rare. I don't know Chris Dixon. He's south of my line. I wonder. I don't know if he would ever seen him or not, but he's a flatlander as well. So
Okay.
yeah. And Madison family, they say we relate to you too, Tim. We live 20 miles north of the border. What
Oh, wow.
province are you in? We'll have to, yeah, because yeah, it's cool. I don't know. It's just I love every time I love getting people on and everybody who doesn't love talking about the weather, you know, it just gives us something to bitch about, right? But you get a feel for where people live and what makes people go, you know. And I
Right.
always joke with Ted because he lives like he's not far from Miami. So of course, like, you know, cold weather is like 70 for him. And he jokes about the iguanas falling out of the trees, but apparently they really do when it gets cold. They fall out and
Oh,
they
yeah.
kind of they go into like a catatonic state, you know.
Oh,
But
definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
Chris says they have rattlers 40 kilometers from here, so
Oh,
25
wow.
miles or
Okay.
something. So yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But
Yeah.
so do you like if anybody had any questions for you, do you mind if they emailed you or anything to ask
Um, sure. I could.
or do you have social media or what would be the way somebody could do a follow-up question with you?
Um,
What's
have them.
easiest for you?
I guess have them go through you, and then
Okay,
just let me know.
sure. I'll
Because I don't
gladly.
really
Yeah.
have like a social media site or anything like that. So,
No, that's okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I know I like you come on literally with like 10 minutes notice, so thank you. I appreciate that. And
Yeah.
anything else you wanted to share with like see nothing really to plug or anything, but
Uh, no, just I think it was a good discussion about, you know, uh, rental real estate, if you will,
yeah.
and that type of thing. So, but yeah, it's definitely worth something to consider. And I would say, you talk about, when do you start doing this? Um, if you're a younger person that's just starting out and say you're renting a place right now, there's a lot of things you can learn from that. Look at your rental agreement that you have. Look at what the
Oh, yeah.
policies are for, late payments, or if you're going to move out, how many months notice do you have to give, what the policy is on pets. I think there's a lot of things you can learn about, if you rent a lot of times, and maybe you do this too, is when you're first going to move in, they'll do a walkthrough, and then you go through and say, oh, okay, I see that window screen has a little hole down in the corner or whatever. And you mark down all these little defects that you see. So when you move out, they can go back to that and say, oh, yeah, we're not going to charge you for that because that was already there when you moved in. Pay attention to how that stuff works, because you're going to be in that situation where they move out and you're going to be like, what? Look at all this stuff. And, it'll give you an idea of the procedures that you need to go through with whoever you're renting to up front, so on the back end how that works. So there's a ton of stuff you can learn, from renting a place yourself, and decide, like, all right, well, if I rent a place, I'm definitely not going to accept whatever this type of
Sure.
pet or whatever. Like some people don't like cats and things, but it helps you learn a lot about how all that works. So you can always learn along the way, just doing stuff like that. So
Cool. Well, thanks, Chris. I appreciate it, man.
sure.
This was great. If you can hang around in the background for just a second, I'll close up and I'll be right back with you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks
Chris.
for
No
having me on.
problem.
All right.
Guys, that was friggin' incredible. That was an awesome episode. I'm very thankful for Chris coming in at last minute there, and he did a more than adequate job filling in. I think we all learned a lot. He brought a lot to the workshop community, and I thanked him 100 times, but I appreciate it. It was great. Hopefully it'll be an episode that a lot of people will want to go back to over time when they're interested in looking at property management, property rentals, that kind of stuff. And I learned a lot. I think it's going to be good for us as well. So, where to find me next, guys? Tomorrow night, Thursday, we got the next episode of Preparedness. That'll be talking about dealing with frozen emergencies. When winter fights back. We had a nasty ice storm here just recently, and I was just reminded of a few things, and I thought we'd shake up the preparedness schedule. And instead of doing the exterior of homes, we're going to talk about surviving winter issues and the whole works, guys. So anyway, any of you are listening to this for the first time, just make sure you hit the follow button on the podcatcher. Share it if you're interested. Go by the YouTube channel. Check out toolmantim.co. We got a whole bunch of stuff over there. Anyway, guys, that's it for me this week. As always, stay happy, stay healthy, and have a great week.